All right, what's up, everybody? So what we're doing here today is we're making a wooden toy tank. My 2-year-old son says to me, "Dad, I want a toy tank." And I figure, what better toy for a 2-year-old than a weapon of destruction or death? So we're going to go ahead and work that out of wood. We've got scrap here. This is 5/4 by 6 scrap. So 5/4 measures just over 1 inch, and we're going to show you that with a set of calipers here. So a piece of 5/4 is coming in the range of roughly 1.13 inch, give or take, and by 6 means it's measuring 5.5 inches wide. These scrap pieces we have are a foot long. So that gives us a rough size for our tank. So we're not working off of making any kind of period specific tank that's going to satisfy some kind of World War II buff. Nothing's going to be built to scale. We're just kind of going to pick a tank and eye it with something more generic. So here you have a picture of an M1 Abrams American tank, rah. We'll keep it for the home team, and we're just going to make something that roughly resembles that. We might add our own artistic flair along the way. We'll see how things go. This project has no set plans, no sketches, no nothing. That's how we work. We work from nothing to something. So let's get started. So the profile of the M1 is kind of long and low, which I think we can approximate with our 5/4 scrap. We're going to use one piece of the 5/4 as the turret, and then we'll use another one for the body, and we'll see how it looks from there. We're going to kind of cut some angles in, get an idea of how it's shaping up, and then we may make a decision from there about where we're going to go from there with the treads, but that's in the future. So we're going to start with the body of the tank by making a couple cuts in it to get the general profile and shape. And what I've done is I've set the table saw to a 45-degree angle. And we're going to run each end of the body through at 45 degrees, tapering under. We're going to try to keep the same overall length of this scrap piece. So our tank should have an overall body length around 12 inches to give you an idea of the size of the toy that we're making. So let's go ahead and make these cuts. So you can see from making that cut that it's left us with a pretty sharp edge on both sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass this through the table saw at a 90-degree angle just to take off that sharp edge. Seems a bit dangerous for a children's toy. Even if it is a weapon of death and destruction, we don't want it to really be. All right, so let's do that. So measuring the piece now, we've got an overall length of approximately 12 and 15/16. So what we're going to do is set it back maybe 1/8 of an inch per side, take that off to get the sharp edge off. And what we'll probably end up doing later is just sanding it out a little bit smooth. So I thought I might show you one of the ways I use to set the table saw. The table saw itself is okay, but it has a fence that came with it. It's not the greatest in the world. It's not a Bismeier or anything, and I got to tell you, the indicators on it are not the greatest. I find sometimes they could be a little out. So if I'm really trying to measure something accurately, I might use a straight edge like this and set it tight up against the fence on the right side, and then just dial in the measurement that I want to the right side of the blade. You want to measure right to the edge of the tooth there, because that's where it's going to cut. So you're talking about from the fence on the right to the right side of the tooth. So if we want to take our 11 and 15/16 inch piece down by 1/8, we're going to bring this down to 11 and 13/16, which looks to be about there. And we'll pass that once, and then we'll reduce it again by yet another 1/8. So we'll go from 11 and 13 sixteenths to 11 and 11 sixteenths. Flip it over, so we'll put the side we just cut up against the fence on the right, and then pass it through on the left. Okay, so as you can see, it just takes that edge off. Focus up. There you go. Takes that edge off there. And like I say, we've got a little bit of imperfection because this is scrap wood. That's all right. That's probably going to end up getting sanded out later. But just take a little bit of that off. All right, so let's get to the next step. So if I want to get on to making the turret on top, I was interested. I could see from the pictures that it has multiple angles tapering back, forward, to the top. And God bless Google, I just typed in overhead image, overhead view of M1 tank, and got a great picture to go off of. And we're going off of this one right here. And as you can see, the turret is probably, and again, I'm just approximating, but I'm going to say that that turret's probably better than half of the overall length of the tank, maybe 60%. So on our 12-inch piece, we're going to say, I think we're going to start at 7 inches, maybe 8. Maybe I'll do 8. See how it looks, and if it looks a little long, we can always chop a little off, but we can't stretch it out later if we cut it too short. So we're going to start by cutting those, the angles you can see overhead, this long angle, the short one here. We're going to start by cutting those off on the table saw using what we call a miter sled. And miter sled is this guy, if you don't know. And what you can do is use this. You can set whatever angle you want to pass through the table saw. So it gives you the ability to do angle cuts safely. Personally, I like using a miter saw more, but we're going to go ahead and give this a shot. And hopefully I still have all my fingers. So first things first, for the turret, let's cut it down to 8 inches. So again, we're going to use the straight edge ruler. I'm going to set this to 8 inches, right about there. Lock it down. I'm going to get our length cut first. Remember, when you're passing through the table saw, you want to be pushed up against your fence. You want your pressure going between the fence and the blade. You don't want to have any pressure on the opposite side of the blade. If you do, when the cut goes through, your two pieces will bind the blade and kick back at you. So you want to keep your pressure on just between blade and fence. Let's go ahead and run that through. So what I've decided to do is kind of draw this thing out a little bit before I make the cuts. So what I'm going to do is I can see in the picture, in the image we're working off of, if this is forward, we'll draw a little arrow on there that's facing forward. We know that at the front of the turret there's kind of a flat spot here. So what we'll do is we'll trace some angles back, leaving the flat spot. We'll draw everything back. I'm going to use just a simple speed square. I'm going to approximate the angles from the image, and we'll get it drawn out. We'll hack it off on the table saw and just see how it how it looks. If we don't like how it looks, we'll throw it through a window or something. But let's start by drawing it and see what we come up with. So the piece is 5.5 inches wide. So we want to start by finding center. Half of 5.5 inches is 2 3/4 inches. And if you're interested in how to check your math, see, we're at 2 3/4. Depends on what angle the camera is. There it is. And just flip that over to the other side. And if you get 2 3/4, close enough, then you're right. So we're going to make this area where the turret sits. You ready for this? I'm going to call it 1 inch. So we'll pull a 1/2 inch back from the 2 3/4, which is a 2 1/4 inch, and then we'll add a 1/2 inch to 2 3/4, which is 3 1/4 inch, giving us a 1 inch flat spot. And then what you do from there, if you want to, we're just going to use our speed square as a straight edge. So we know that the angles, coming from the front are a little steeper. So we're going to go steep on the front. And what I did here is I simply put, that's probably not going to work. All right, well, we can match that up like this. We can take our speed square and we can measure down from the side, and where this line intersects the speed square 1.5 inches, line intersects the speed square at 1.5 inches, we can simply just flip the speed square over and then make a mark at 1.5 inches over here and connect the dots, and that'll give us two even lines to work off of. So here's our hash mark there. Use the speed square like so, and go from mark to mark. And then what we're going to do is kind of a long taper to the back. The angle was real shallow, so I'm going to do something like that. And that right there, that mark on the bottom ends up being just shy of 3/4 of an inch from the side. So what I'm going to do, same deal. I'm going to flip over. I'm going to make a mark just shy of 3/4 inches on the other side. And then I'm going to connect those two dots to make an even angle with the other side. So what I've got is something roughly coffin shaped, which seems fitting, being that this is for a weapon of death and destruction. But I'm going to reference back to the picture, because something about this to me, it just doesn't look quite right. So let's get the picture up. So we've got the picture on the left. We've got my approximation on the right. I don't know. What do you think? Decent? Pretty good, I think. One thing this isn't taking into consideration is when we cut these angles out, we're also going to put a compound angle in it as well, which you can see in the picture. So that's probably going to change the visual on how this one comes out once we got that compound angle cut into it. And again, we're going to approximate that angle as well. So let's get to cutting this thing, see what we got. Okay, so how do we figure out what these angles are? I mean, as you saw before, I just kind of made them up. And luckily, your speed square can tell you. So I'm going to show you how to figure out the angles using your speed square. And it's very simple. But your speed square may or may not have this arrow. And what that's showing you is the pivot point. And if you don't have the arrow, go out and buy a Swanson, because they do have the arrow. So what you do is you start by putting the pivot point right where your angle intersects this line. Okay, so we're going for the angle off of this line here. So you put your pivot point, and then we're going to lay that speed square right down on that line. And what we do is you trace over where this straight line intersects these numbers, and that tells you what your angle is. So in this case, our angle is about 32 degrees. You like that? Let's do it to this one too. So in this case, we'll put our pivot point right where the line intersects the bottom here. Set that down. Match up this side, the side of the speed square with the inch measurements. Match that with the line there. Secure it and take a read. In this case, the edge of the wood is right there by the edge of the speed square, but I'm going to say it's like 84. maybe a little heavier than 84 degrees, but close enough for us to do what we have to do. So we've got 84 degrees. We've got 32 degrees to work with. So let's take that to our table saw and set our table saw off of those measurements. Okay, so one thing I've realized is that even though we have all our marks on top of our board, because we're making angle cuts, we actually want to see where the blade is going to touch the bottom of the board. So if you can imagine, these cuts are actually going to end up inward somewhat because the blade's going to pass through the wood at the bottom and then angle in. So what we need to know is really where the blade's going to hit the wood at the bottom. So how do you do that? Once again, if you guessed speed square, you were right. You're going to use the speed square. It's an easy, quick way to do it. You'll notice in profile it has that T shape. And what that allows you to do is rest that against your workpiece. So in this case, I want to carry this mark down to the bottom, as well as these points, because that's what I want to keep my eye on as I'm table sawing. So you simply put the T-square on your board, slide that up right there, and carry that line down. Okay, and then we're going to do that to all of these points. All right. It's much harder to do looking through a stupid camera than just doing it yourself, but hey, whatever. There. And there. Okay. And then we got one more, two more. All right, one there, and this one here. Okay, so that gives us a point, me, I don't see you guys cutting anything, gives a point for me to keep an eye on where the blade is actually going to pass through, because I'm not using the fence on these cuts, we're using the miter sled. So let me show you here. We're going to end up passing through on the opposite side. We're going to end up passing through on the opposite side of the fence. So this is kind of freehanding, if you will. I'm going to hold it tight, but we're passing through here. So let's go ahead and make these cuts. So you may have seen me quickly rig up this contraption. Basically all it is a sacrificial piece of scrap that I use to get my support farther over from where the miter sled is. It wasn't close enough to the blade, but by clamping a piece of wood across, I was able to keep that angle, get my piece pushed over, and still push it through with the miter sled. But I've got better advice, and that's to go to the store and buy a miter saw. Cutting compound angles on a table saw is just ridiculous. I've got miter saws. I should have went and grabbed one first, but we gave it a shot. So the other thing to say is I quickly realized when cutting my angle on this front edge here and then this other edge here, I quickly realized that what was going to happen was I was going to lose my flat surface up front. And I did consider using some fancy editing or pretending like I knew that was going to happen. But then I was like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and face the music and admit that that was something I didn't see coming. That's okay though. Remember when I said we were going to take this from 7 to 8 inches because we can cut it down later. So what we're going to do is we're just going to slice off the front edge here and give it that flat spot again. But again, this is gritty, real life woodworking. So I'm going to show you all the flaws and everything that goes wrong along the way. All right, let's cut this down. Okay, so as you can see, we've got the saw set up just to make a straight pass through to cut the angle off the front here. I got the miter sled out of the way, threw it down a flight of stairs. But you'll notice when I'm setting the depth on these on the blade, which you want anytime you're using a circular saw like this, be it a table saw or a handheld circular saw, you want those teeth to just poke up through the cut, maybe a 1/8 to 1/4 inch through. You're not looking to set it crazy deep. Let the teeth do the work, and probably also increases safety, which is probably a good thing considering I don't have the riving knife or safety cover set on this table saw. Anyway, that's not what this show's about, all right? Let's make this cut. There we go. We got a flat spot again. What's wrong with this picture? Anybody want to tell me? Oops, there we go. I'll tell you. What's wrong is I forgot to put the angle on the cut that I just made. So tanks use sloping armor. A guy, I think it was a Russian, I believe during World War II, figured out that if you slope the armor, enemy shells hitting it might actually have a chance to ricochet off of it instead of penetrating. So while my toy tank may not have to stand up to that kind of abuse, we're still going to put the angle on in the for authenticity. All right, let's set that angle. All right, so I thought I might tell you something here. We just want to tilt this angle back here. We don't want to lose any overall length, and we don't have to. Since the angle's tilting back, what we're going to do is set the cut on the saw to just hit our piece of stock right at the bottom and then carry the angle back from there, so we won't lose any overall length. And what you want to do is, if you have a tooth set to be just flush with the height of your throat plate, then you bring your piece of stock over and you match it up to the corner of the tooth. Remember, it's the side that's on the side of the fence. You want to match that corner of the tooth up, lock it down, turn it on, pass it through. So I so much did not like using the miter sled on the table saw to make the compound cuts on our turret that I decided it might be fun to recut it using a miter saw, which is my preferred method. However, upon starting the first cut, it cut so bad that the edge here, you might see these little, yeah, go ahead, focus for me, would you? No, it's not happening. There it is. Maybe there. Maybe there. Not so much. There. I might have to edit this one. Oh, there it is. Look at that. See this stuff? That was all coming up and it was smoking and everything else. And I realized that means that my blade is shot. So this thing was on the job site. My guys were using it. They couldn't possibly care less to cut through anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace the blade. Now, you want to learn something? Of course you do. So here's the deal. As far as wood blades go, the less teeth you have, the faster the cut, but the dirtier the cut. And the more teeth you have, the cleaner the cut. So in a 7 1/4 inch blade size, which is very common for a handheld circular saw, in this case it's for a battery operated miter saw, when you get down to 24 teeth, you're talking about a framing blade or ripping blade. When you get up to, say, 40 teeth, that's going to be something more for fine woodworking, which is more like what we're doing here, but that's the only one I've got on site, and since we're going to sand everything anyway, we're going to go ahead and use the 24 tooth. All right, so less teeth, faster cut, more teeth, cleaner cut. That's game. So we have our miter cut made on the first side, but we want to do a cut on the other side. So I thought I might show you how to adjust the miter saw to the other direction. So what we do first is this surface is called the miter cut. So we're cutting at 5.5 degrees. So I'm going to shift over to the other side of 0. And that indicator down there gets to 5.5 degrees. And lock that down. And then our bevel cut. So your miter cut is your horizontal axis and your bevel cut is your vertical axis cut. We're going to swing that over until the indicator on the left side gets to 20 degrees. Lock that down. And then before you make any miter cut, it's suggested that you roll your blade down the line you have drawn before making the cut. So I put my blade down and match the edge of the tooth with my cut line, and then just roll it back and see how it matches up. And in this case, it does not. So good thing I didn't make the cut. We loosen that up and try to match the angle up a little better and adjust that until we get that tooth down there, roll it back. And remember, when you're making a cut with a miter saw, you're going to start the blade, push it down through the piece, and then push it away from you until you complete the cut. So we're going to adjust it more until we get right where we want it. That looks about right. And we'll give it just a little more. Lock it down. Make our cut. So you can tell from the quality of the cut here. Let that focus in or not. There it is. See that? That's the difference between a nice finished blade and a framing blade. But as I said, we're going to sand this out, so we're not too worried about that now. We pull that safety back. You guys can see whether or not this is lining up to our line. Not quite, so we're going to back it off just a bit. Close enough. So there it is. Very easy to make these cuts with a dual bevel compound miter saw. I was looking at the M1A1 Abrams and realized that it has a bit of a shelf in the back, which I'll show you here in this picture. You see the rear deck in through here, a bit of a raised shelf, and I was cutting colonial stop for windows and says to myself, wow, the colonial stop is just about the right size and shape for a raised shelf. So the stop is, if this would, there you go. The stop is, there's just a bit of a curve over here. That's how you can recognize it from a regular stop. It's sold at the lumber yard by the foot. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut it to size, and we're going to add it to the rear deck back here just to give it a little bit of something. So let's get to that. I'm going to use this here as a benchtop belt sander. You could use all kinds of different sanders, but all I want to use it for is to get the paint primer off of this area where we're going to attach that rear deck piece. We're going to glue it on, so we want wood to wood where we're gluing to get a nice grip. So let's go ahead and get sanding. Go. So that'll be sufficient to get a nice bonding with our glue. So let's get to that. Our piece measures 5.5 heavy, which, as you'll see here, heavy is when your measurement is above the line but not quite to the next one. So it's just a little heavy from 5.5. So I've marked our piece of stop at 5.5 heavy, and we'll slice that on the miter saw. We have our pieces here. We've got our body piece, we've got our colonial stop, we've got tight bond ultimate wood glue, and a couple of spring-loaded clamps. Now, the spring-loaded clamps aren't the strongest you can use, but they'll do for what we need. They also have the padded ends, so they're fast, they're easy, and they're strong enough for what we need here. Now, the on camera here or what? Yeah. So the glue, what we can do is we place this back here, flush it up to the back end. And we can just draw a little reminder line so that when we move the piece, we know where to not put the glue or put the glue. Apply a liberal application. I promised I wouldn't bring politics into this. But well. And then you'll see we had that imperfection in the back corner. So this piece is going to help hide that imperfection. And then later we can use a little fill when we paint our tank. So clamp this down. Make sure the sides are flush and the back is flush. That's not very flush, so we're going to get as close to flush as we can, and then what we'll do is when we sand it all out, those edges will come out perfect. Use a little paper towel, wipe up excess glue. There you go. That's clamped. We'll come back in about an hour, check on it. She'll be good to go. I've decided we need something to boost our turret a bit up off of the body, even though we're using something called a roto hinge, which will give it a bit of space in between. We need something to boost it up a bit more. And so I've taken a piece of 1x6 and cut it to 4¼ inches. One of these directions, I forget. And then I ran it through the table saw at 3/8 of an inch. So being that a 10-inch blade on a table saw set to full depth won't do the full breadth of cut, we run it through one way and then flip it over and finish it off. And then give it a bit of a sand to erase the saw marks. Now, you're not going to see either side of this piece, so really there's not much point to it. But it's going to end up in between these two pieces to give that turret the boost up. But we want to cut it circular, and I want it at 4¼ inches. If I had a compass handy, I'd use a compass to mark this 4¼ inches. But I have something else that happens to be, so we're going to trace that out. It just so happens that a quart of paint, that container, has a 4¼ inch diameter or something real close to it. So for our purposes, that's going to work. I'm just going to trace out the shape of the can. And I like to hold my pencil inward at an angle. You hold it upright, you'll end up with a circle too big. So make sure your pencil's tight in at an angle. Try to keep it as sharp as you can. And if you want to get real fussy, when you cut this, you cut the line off. But we don't have to worry about it that much. So we're going to take this over to the scroll saw and cut this circle out. So this tool is called a scroll saw. And this is a benchtop scroll saw. And what it does is it passes this very small blade through the workpiece back and forth. It reciprocates, and it's got a little blower here to blow the dust out. If you don't have one of these, you can achieve the same results or nearly as good a results with a jigsaw. Same sort of idea, but the scroll saw is nice. Gives you a flat table to work on, and it's good for the tight curves, detail work. And these blades are available in different teeth per inch depending on how clean of a cut you want, and they're available in different sizes that you can achieve a tighter radius on your cut. So let's get this thing cut. All right. I actually wish that cut hadn't been caught on camera, but there you go. There's our circle. You see that? Yep. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run this around the on the sander, because you will see this edge. You're not going to see these guys. You'll see that edge. So the sander will take some of those saw marks out. We'll go ahead and do that now. Sorry, here. Good. No saw marks. We took it down to where we just kind of shaved it right where the pencil line was. So it's a pretty good circle. Not bad. There's a saw mark right there. So what did we achieve with that? We'll put this down first. Set our turret on there. It gives us just that bit of a raise. Nice. Good job. Gives us just that bit of a raise off the deck for that added realism. Okay, we're going with that. So we've come to that crucial step where we need to mount the turret. And just going by the profile on an M1 Abrams, it looks like the turret's roughly 3/4 the length of the turret. Anyway, so if that's 8 inches, we're going to cut our turret at 6 inches. And what I've purchased is 1/2 inch dowel. So we're going to cut that and mount that in. Let's get going. I've made a 7-inch mark on our 1/2 inch dowel. We're going to cut it off at 7 inches so that we can recess the dowel into the body of the turret by 1 inch. Again, we're using the miter sled on the saw for this cut. Minus 1 inch. Great. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to bore a 1/2 inch hole into the leading edge of this, and I think we're going to do it on the drill press. Excuse me, 1/2 inch diameter hole, 1 inch deep. So let's set up the drill press to do that. We got this all set up now, and it was just terrible. But you have to make sure that your bit on your drill press is plumb, as in it's going straight down on both axes, this way and that way. So check both. And then once you have that plumb, you got to make sure that this surface is completely level. So you check it in this direction and this direction. And then you're going to make sure that when we bring this bit down, it's going to hit that center point exactly where we want it. So this turret is set at a 20-degree angle, since we'd cut that at a 20-degree angle. So then this comes in, it's going to come in flat to that. The drill press is set for high speed. In this case, on this, it's set to 2,720 RPM, which is what you want for softwoods. And we have a depth limiter up here, so that when it comes down, it's set that it won't let the bit go farther than 1 inch into our piece. So let's do it. No take backs. Do I like that? It's a little low to me. I'm adjusting it. Adjust it a little. Let's do it. Jesus Christ. I thought I'd take a second to tell you that, we made that last hole. Here's how it came out. Pretty good. Pretty much how we wanted it. But we made that last hole with a drill press. But if you don't have a drill press, they make something, if you don't have the space for a floor stand drill press like I have, they have a benchtop drill press. They're a little smaller, maybe a little less expensive. They'll still get the job done. But they also make this thing. It's called an angle drill guide. This thing's super cheap. You get one like this. This one's from Harbor Freight for like $20, and it allows you to mount your existing drill in it to hold a specific angle, and you can achieve some success with it. So anyway, in a pinch, that'll work too. So I've decided, last minute running design change on the turret. There's this angle back here, kind of an upswept angle on the back portion of the turret. I'm going to add that in on the table saw now. I've got the table saw set to 10 degrees, kind of an arbitrary depth. We're going to start with taking off a small bit of wood. As I always say, you can always take more off, but you can't put it back on. All right, so let's try this. More? Let's do more. A little bit more. One more. One more pass. Oh, that's looking pretty good. One more pass. Aha! You see what that means? That right there means I gotta set the blade depth a little deeper. It's good. It's good. I like it. Let's go with that. You may have been wondering, when we made our little circle bump out, are we going to attach it to the bottom of the turret like so, or are we going to attach it to the base of the tank? And I've made an executive decision that we're going to attach it to the base of the tank. I feel like minimizing the amount of weight swinging around on our hinge is probably best. Not that it makes much difference. But in which case, if we're going to attach it to the base of the tank, then we're going to do what we did before, and we're going to sand a bare spot on the wood here so that we can glue this down nicely and get a real good grab. I have our position marked out for our spacer. I got it where I wanted it and then traced it again with the pencil, and that does two things for me. One, it gives me a mark on where to put it back, and two, it gives me where not to put the glue. So make sure there's no excess dirt on your piece, dust. And then when you place it, I'm going to go ahead and kind of smush it around. Make sure it gets all smushed in there real nice. There it is. Like that. And then we're going to grab some clamps. Clamp it on there. Make sure it's all smushed around just right. Okay. In this case, I think we're going to use our spring clamps again. Why not? You know what? I'm not going with the spring clamps. I don't care what you say. Going with a nice burly C-clamp. And And the reason being is you won't see either place that this C-clamp makes contact because it's likely to put a dent in where it clamps down because they're burly like that. You know what? If I was a smart man, I would have flipped that over and done the twist portion from the other side. Wow, this is getting to be a real fiasco. Doing it off camera. Oh well, just imagine me clamping it. Got first choice, right? Let's mount the gun in the turret. So we're simply just going to put a bunch of wood glue in there and then set that in. Fill that in. I'll set that in there. Okay. I'll get that all the way in. Smush it around so it makes good contact. There you go. I got to say, I don't love the angle. I think it looks a little too excited, but it'll do. So we'll leave that to dry. We're going to leave our circle to dry on the base and come back to it. So after much soul searching and deliberation on how to accomplish the tracks here, ideas involve plundering an old Tonka track loader to buying them, and all of that just seemed like it wasn't going to happen. So we've come down to hiding the set of wooden wheels underneath. It's not how I imagined it. Loses some authenticity, but the young man will just have to suffer through. So let's get on it. What I've done here is I've marked a 45-degree angle, continuing this angle here and here, just a bit smaller. The picture of the tank looked like the tracks picked up just a bit back from the body. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass this through the table saw at 45 degrees on both sides, get that shape cut out, and then we'll go from there. So now that we've got the cross section here, that shape like that we're going to attach to the bottom of the tank, we're going to take a couple rips off of it to be each side of the tank. So we're going to take two 1-inch strips off of this thing, and I'm feeling like that 3/4 inch is a little too tall. I'm sorry, did I say 3/4? Well, it's not. This is 1 inch tall. So we're probably going to rip that down, make it a little thinner, because I think the proportion of the track to the body was a little smaller than that. Anyway, let's slice these off. So there you go. There's two pieces, cross section. So these are now 1 inch wide and 1 inch tall. But as I said, I want to make them only 3/4 tall to change up the proportions. And as you can see here, I actually made these, as I said, maybe I said in the beginning of the video, I really don't remember. But I might have mentioned we made this out of scrap wood, and the scrap wood happens to be finger jointed. As you can see those right there? And put that together. So that's how sometimes I'll put different wood products together using scraps. So we're kind of using scraps of scraps. And I may have rather made this out of just wood, but I kind of regret that. But I've got a lot of regrets in life, and you can just add that to a lengthy list. You might be asking yourself, well, if our next step is to install wooden wheels under this wooden tool, you might be saying, Jonesy, we don't have any wooden wheels. How are we going to get wooden wheels? The answer is we're going to use a hole saw. Now this hole saw happens to be 7/8 diameter. So what we'll get out of it, hopefully, is the diameter of the cut will be 7/8. That'll give us our wheel. And then that center bit there will bore out the center to accommodate our axle. Check it out. This wooden dowel. That's our axle. We'll probably have to bore out the center a little bit bigger, but at the end of the day, I think it'll work. So let's get the drill press set up for this. I've got the drill press set up, adjusted the pulleys to put the speed at 750 RPM, which is just about right for boring through soft wood with this size bit. So we're going to go ahead. Got this, what we have is a piece of, a really good piece of 1x scrap. And 1x means it's 3/4 of an inch tall that way. So that's going to end up being how wide our wheels are. So let's go ahead and bore down in there. I'm afraid I may not have tightened the belts down enough. Let's try that. Take two. So that would be our wheel up in there. We might have to get a little nail set to extract it. Do this to me, I'm on camera. Alright, I'm not going to bore you with the semantics. I'll figure out how to get this out, and then we'll be back. We're boring out the last wheel now. So, just 4 of those. Get you there. Saw that? It's man shit. Alright, so this is what we end up with. We end up with that, right? So what happens is the hole saw blasts out the back of the wood. So you got worst on that one, you got a little bit on there. So what we'll do is we'll run that through the sander. What I could have done is I could have just bored most of the way through, let that center bit pop out the other side, then flip the piece and gone the rest of the way from the other side. But I was just not motivated or cared enough to do that. So we're going to do it the other way. All right. There you go. These wheels are definitely not my finest hour, but they're going to be tucked up under the tank. Nobody's going to know except me and you. It's going to be our secret. After looking at the last set of wheels I made, I decided that they were not actually going to work. The diameter was a little too small, so I've stepped it up to a larger hole saw size of 1 1/8. So let's just go ahead and make the wheels again. Here's what we're going to do to make this thing go. So very much unlike a real M1 Abrams that's powered by a 1,500 horsepower turbine engine, this one's going to get pushed by a 4-year-old. So we are going to suspend our 4 wheels underneath it. And we're going to use threaded rod. That's this stuff available at the store as our axle. We're going to cut 2 pieces of threaded rod and we're going to insert it in that and that and have the wheels in the middle. And that's the plan. It's the best I got. Let's go with it. You may be wondering, well, how do we cut threaded rod? Well, I'm going to show you. This right here is a 4.5-inch grinder. Specifically, it's a DeWalt D28115, and it has the biggest motor you can buy to turn a 4.5-inch cutting wheel. So if you were a real man, you'd own one of these already. If you don't have one, really any grinder that you could buy at the store will cut it. If you didn't have a grinder, you could use a hacksaw. I forgot to tell you already. You may have been wondering what the tape was about, but that's what the tape was about. The tape was our marker, because you put pencil or marker on this, you probably won't see it. Wrap the piece of threaded rod with tape, and you'll know where you need to cut it. So one more. Saw that? Now we're going to take our 2 axles. I'm going to clean up the cut edges. And as you can see here, I kind of tested this spot. Go ahead and focus. There. We're going to remove the threads on each side of the axle so where it inserts into the wood, it'll spin freely. You use a bench grinder for that. I'm going to eye it. I'm going to take off just over 1/2 inch of the threads on each axle. Oh shit, there you go. Alright, see that? That'll work. I'm just setting it against the wheel. Come on. There, maybe? There. Setting it against the wheel and spinning it evenly. Take those threads off. That's what we end up with. 2 axles. You can see we got the threads off where they'll insert into the wood on each side. So next step is really to secure one of these tracks to the body and on the one side, and then we'll put the wheels on each axle, put it in, and then secure the track to the other side to lock it all in. But one other thing we're going to likely need to do is actually chew out some of the underbody to allow for the top of the wheel. We'll see. Maybe not. Maybe we should. I don't know. We'll figure it out. We have our axles. We have our wheels. So what we're going to do is we're going to simply thread the wood wheel onto the axle. The other side, like so. And keep threading it until it looks like the one I've done off camera, to where we have our smooth portions just exiting the wheels. So we'll just keep threading them on, and then at some point they get difficult enough and we want to fine tune them. We'll put the axle in a vice grip and hold it while we thread the one wheel in. Or crack a wheel. Either way. Looks like we're making another wheel. God damn it. There's our 2 axles. Wheels installed. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a mark here and here where we've got our axles sitting, and that'll give us an idea of the distance from the edge to the center of the axle where we're going to want to drill our holes. So we want to set these wheels back far enough from the edge that you're not really seeing them, but close enough to the outside edge so they still have stability. So let's do that. We've got a mark here, mark there. What I'm just going to do is I'm going to measure from that outside corner to the mark, and it looks like I've got about 7/8 and 5/8, so I think we'll stick with 7/8 on both counts, right? So what we'll do is measure from the edge. That's 7/8. Now I want to show you, if you're trying to get an accurate measurement with a tape measure, the best way to do it is you put your 1 where you're trying to measure from, like so, and then just go 7/8 from that. If you try to pull it off of the blade here, it won't be as accurate. Or you could always use a flat ruler, something like that, when you're doing this kind of work. Either way. Alright, and then once we have these, we're going to put them together. And we're going to use a square. That way, if you use a square, you line those together, square the mark across, and then square it on the other side. That'll ensure that your holes are lined up on both sides so that your axles are sitting straight. So then what you can do is just use your square, bring that mark down like so. Same deal here. Bring that mark down. And right there. And then this one here. Right there. Now we've got 4 marks for the insides for our axles. The next thing we have to do is figure out what size hole we're going to drill. So what I've got here is a digital caliper, and you turn that on, and this is measuring in inches. So we'll just open this up, put that around the threadless portion, and it's showing about somewhere between 22 or 21 hundredths of an inch. Same deal there. So we're just going to try to find a drill bit that's just a smidge over that. I'm not really paying attention to the marking on it. I want to actually measure it. So that, maybe we'll step up to the next one. Still 0.23. 0.23. So what a smart man would do is he would take a piece of scrap wood, drill a hole in it in this, and just see how the axle fits before doing it in our finished piece. I have the center point of the track mount marked, which is 3/8, half of 3/4, and have it clamped into the drill press with the size drill that we marked out before, size bit. And I've got the drill press set to where it will only go 1/2 an inch deep, so it has a stop on it. We don't want to go through the other side. We bring that down, and I'm just going to double check that depth, put an eye on it. It looks good. There it is. So there's our hole there. Now we're going to flip it over. We're going to bring this down just to eye it, make sure it's going to be in the right spot before we clamp it and before we drill it. I'm going to take another closer look, make sure that that point on the drill is really coming down in our mark, and it is. So we're going to go ahead Drill that out. And then we'll do the other one just the same. So I put this together just to give it a little test run. And when I push it, you can see that the front axle spins nicely. The back one doesn't. The reason being, I took this out, double checked it with the caliper, digital caliper, put that on there. Oh, 0.23 inches. So we're off a hundredth of an inch on that bad boy. We put around the other side and we're getting 0.22 just like the other one. So, you know, yeah, right in that neighborhood, 22, 23. So let's shave it down and get it going right. All right, just gave it a quick shaving and boom, look at that, rolls awesome. So fixed. Next. The next issue we're running into is that we've centered the wood wheels to the mount into this track. The wheels being larger than the track not only stick out from the bottom, but they also stick out from the top, so they won't sit flush on the bottom of the tank. Not a big deal. We're gonna mark it, and then we're gonna use a router bit just to chew a little bit out for these wheels to recess into the tank. So there's a couple ways we could do that, but what's an easy way? Easy way is to clamp it and mark it. So maybe we get that where we want it. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll get that like we want it. I don't even need to clamp it. Right, so if that's where we want it to be, we'll just make a couple quick marks there and there. That should be all we need. We're just going to square it over. We'll get the track out of the way. What we'll do is we'll bring our mark. Notice we're using the speed square again. Just going to bring that mark right across the bottom. That's all we'll need. And this one too, we'll bring that one right across there. Now we've got marks of where the axles go. Now we'll also need some kind of idea where the wheels sit. So we're like that, then there. We're not getting real scientific about this. It's going to be underneath the tank. Who's looking? There, there, there. This is, again, it's going to be our secret. There, there, and there, and there, and there. So, see that? So we got our front back marks for each wheel. We know where the lines end is where the track is. So we can go past that because the track will cover it for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to embolden that mark. These marks, right? Same deal here. Like that. And right there and there. And then we're going to connect the dots on our cross piece with just a straight edge. Right? Like that. I didn't need to draw all the way across, but whatever. I'm going to paint it anyway. There. And then we know that our track comes in 3/4 of an inch. That's how wide it is. So we'll go ahead and just make a 3/4 mark there and there. And then we'll put one there. There. We'll connect dots on those as well. Okay, and there. So that gives us some rectangles on each side to work with. Now let's go get a router set up to chew those out. I've set up the router to take the to dig into the bottom of the tank there. And what we're using is what's called a straight cutting bit, and it's got a blade at the top on each side, and then it's got blades down each side. So it'll cut into the workpiece as you plunge downward in this case, and then as you pass across it'll also cut a channel in. We're going to end up needing to cut 2 passes because it's only, I think it's a 3/4 inch width, and our width on our wheels is a little bigger. That's okay, we're going to do 2 passes anyway, and I've got the fence set up to be at the right distance from the edge. See the sort of thing it does? It just takes that out. So we're going to move it over a little bit and take out the other side of that. And like I said, nobody's going to see this, so we're not making it super pretty. Just got to get the job done. Now we're going to glue the tracks to the bottom of the tank body. So I've got them sanded down, cleaned up. I wiped everything down with acetone. Don't use water, because water will soak in. I prefer to use paint thinner to acetone, but they'll both evaporate quickly, so they won't stay soaked into the wood. We're just going to use standard tight bond wood glue. You're going to want to use a relatively liberal application. Or put it on there, and then use if you've got something to spread it a bit just to get it even. There's going to be a whole bunch spooging out from this. Get this placed where it was. It's definitely not where it was. That's where it was. Okay. And then we're using C-clamps to hold this down. I say about 1 hour to get it to hold, and then 24 hours for maximum strength. So when we're using C-clamps, I use like this is a scrap from the track itself. I use some scrap wood on each C-clamp, or on each side, because the C-clamps will have a tendency to bite into that soft wood, and you don't want bite on soft wood or even hardwood. So we get that on there, and then once we get it kind of tight, we're going to even out the edge there. Now if there's a little bit of glue on the surface, that's okay, because it'll sand off easily. But what we can do is we can wipe off the excess initially. A wet rag is best, but anything is better than nothing. And like I say, we'll just sand off the balance later. So if we've got, is that right? Yeah. If we've got the edge lined up, we're good to go. Now I gotta find something to use for the other one. So I've removed the clamps, and everything's together as we would hope. And at this point, and it rolls, great. Put the turret on. That's roughly what she's gonna look like. But at this point, we need to paint it first. I'm gonna paint the body and the turret separately, so that I can get underneath here before it's attached to that. and get under all of this. And then we'll attach turret to body. So I'm going to sand it quickly. What I'll do is I'll use machine sander for power sander for all the flats. And then I'll probably hand sand and ease the edges. And then paint it up. And then we'll get back to putting our hinge between these guys. Now let's do that. And we're back from the paint booth. We got it all painted up. Woodland camo is what was requested. All right. So now that that's all done, we're going to attach the turret to the body. Now, you may recall from the beginning of this, way long ago, we had a circle drawn underneath here. That circle matches up to the circle we have on our turret. So, we're going to mount what's called a roto hinge. This little doodad right here. And the way that works is you drill a hole and wood glue the roto hinge into each side, and then we'll drill a hole here and wood glue it in there. So, we want to center that roto hinge both in the circle on the turret, and we center it on this circle. So you may be asking yourself, Jonesy, how do I find the center of a circle? And if you are fortunate, smile the pundi, because I am going to show you how to find the center of a circle. And the secret to finding the center of a circle is, I wish I had a smaller square, but we're going to use a framing square because that's what I've got right here. But the secret is you need to make a square within the circle. So what you do is you put your tool, square, put a corner up to the edge of the circle, and you draw what's going to end up being essentially an L shape within the circle, just like that. Okay. Probably just a little too close to the edge, so I'm going to back that off some. It doesn't make much difference. Do that. So now we've got half of our square, and then you flip it around and you match the edges of the square to where your lines intersect the edge of the circle. So that's going to look something like that. I really wish this was a smaller square, but hey. There. Smaller square and a sharper pencil. Okay, so once you have that, as you can see, we've got a square within our circle. Now what you need to do is find the center of the square, and finding the center of a square is even easier. You simply draw a line from corner to corner. One direction, and then you put it the other way, like so. Make sure you got it right on, and draw in the other direction. And now that center of the X is the center of the circle. Got it? Good. Now that we have both center points of our circles marked, I did the other one when you weren't watching, we're going to drill it out. But I want to show you, when you're using a drill bit that's 3/8 diameter and you're really trying to get it accurate to that center point, sometimes when you're drilling, your drill bit can wander on you and go all over the place. So what you do is you get a tool like this or something similar. You can even use a screw. I think this is called a scratch awl. And you put it right in the middle, right where you want to drill, and just tap it. Okay? And that leaves a little indent impression that your drill bit will center on, and it won't wander. So we're going to go ahead and bop this one too. This is especially effective in nice soft pine wood. So we got that drill dented, and then I've marked the drill bit with a piece of tape. That's so I don't go too deep. So you can see this, this guy wants to go in just about that far. So I've marked it with some tape so I don't go too deep. And away we go. That's it for that. That's it for that. All right, we're going to break out some glue and get this glued up. So I'm going to use just a regular Type-On wood glue. Any wood glue would do. And we're going to put a little bit on the outside surface of the hinge, and we'll put more inside the hole we drilled. I don't know, can you see that? Maybe there. Maybe. You see this action? Mush that around a little bit so we get some even coverage. And shove that in there. Just like that. Okay. And same deal on the other side. Okay. Around so we get a nice good bond. Maybe a little bit over there, like so. Don't be afraid to use your finger, it won't kill you. Okay, wipe that off. No one's ever gonna see it, but wipe off the edge there, a little there, and then push that down into place. And there you go. So there it is. We'll let that dry, but as you can see, it works well. It's a little looser than I would hope, but they made it, I didn't. And our wheels work too. Like so. Look at that. All right.